Is the Home Office starting to interview people more than they used to? I actually think that they are. Now, you get interviews in two different circumstances. Number one, as part of the application. Number two, in addition to the application. Interviews include interviews for asylum, for example, interviews for marriage. Is the relationship genuine and subsisting or not? Interviews for student. Is there a credible reason for this person to be applying as a student? Are they credible or not? Interviews in relation to work. Is this a genuine work offer or not? Interviews in relation to passport identification, verification, and other types of verifications. Interviews in relation to suspicions relating to providing false information. Now, considering all these different types of interviews, you would expect that the Home Office would have duties in relation to how they conduct the interviews. We're going to go through that. We're going to talk about what the Home Office should be doing, what the Home Office has actually done in the past as per my experience, and we're going to be talking about what we usually do as part of the interview process, and we're going to see if there are any myths in between this that can be busted. Now, there are documents, lengthy documents, that govern how the Home Office interviewers should behave and conduct themselves when they're interviewing you, and how the process should be done in order to make sure that it is as fair as it possibly can be, and that you are giving the best type of evidence that you are able to in that particular situation, and not prejudiced or disadvantaged in any way. In doing so, we would expect that they're making sure that it's fair, making sure that they're following the rules and guidances associated with conducting such a fair interview. That if an interpreter is called, the interpreter speaks the language of the person that is there, and that particular dialect, so that nothing is missing in the way the person explains their case. That they will be providing sufficient notice so the person can prepare themselves for this extensive interview, because these interviews can be very difficult. Nobody in everyday life is used to being questioned the way you are in such an interview. So sufficient notice is necessary. There are vulnerable adults, and there should be safeguards in place in order to protect those vulnerable adults and to make it as fair as possible for them, so that it mirrors the situation and that they are not disadvantaged compared to a normal person who's attending that interview. And two of the most important things: number one, not creating a barrier between the legal advice or the legal advisor attending the interview, and number two, not using their own bias or relying on their own bias at any stage within the interview, and not jumping to speculative conclusions in the interview. So this is what we expect, but is this what we get? I'm going to give you my experience of 6 years of attending client interviews. Now, I attend every single one of my clients' interviews because I like the Home Office to know that the solicitor has faith in their case and that the client is not alone. So I'll give you two of the worst cases that I've ever come across in terms of how my clients were treated despite me being there. I'll give you one example where I physically attended and one example where I remotely attended. In relation to the physically attending, that was an asylum interview. Now, this was a very interesting situation because from the start you could tell that the interviewer wanted to get out of there, because we were the last people that she was interviewing. Now, what she started doing was huffing and puffing every single time my client was telling her story. She was interrupting my client halfway through and saying, no, that's not what I asked, when the client was actually answering exactly what she had asked. And she was telling my client to cut it short, whatever she was saying, which is of course wrong, because my client is in a position where she's going to establish the fundamentals of her claim and substantiate her claim. So she can use as many words as she wants in order to do that, in order to explain her story in her way to this person, who will then be judging whether my client meets the criteria or not. How dare she stop my client from expressing herself the way she needs to in order to let the Home Office understand what it is that she has been through and why it is that she's claiming asylum. There was an incident when my client wanted a comfort break, and this is how the interviewer reacted. Oh, okay, fine. If you have to go, then I'll give you 10 minutes. And I was like, what's going on here? So I asked my client, you can take more time if you want. You don't need to stick to those 10 minutes. But my client was worried and she said, no, 10 minutes is enough. I'll do what I need to do in 10 minutes. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Did you know that when somebody is feeling overwhelmed in the interview, they can step out and take a breather before coming back in? They don't have to specifically only leave the interview to relieve themselves. But if they do want to relieve themselves, there is no barrier on earth that this woman, interviewer, can use to stop her from doing that. Bizarre. absolutely bizarre. But as we went on, I found out exactly what was going on. Because when I pushed back, the truth came out. And what she said at that point was, well, I need to go. It's the end of the day. And if we don't finish the interview, your client will have to come back again. And I was like, I have no problem coming back, and my client has no problem coming back. As long as her story is told the way it should be told, and just because you have to go, that shouldn't prejudice her and prevent her from being able to tell her story. Then I was told off. She said, Mr. Solicitor, if you don't be quiet, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Now, I know that they can ask me to leave, and I know that the only time that I can intervene is if there is a grave injustice, which is exactly what was going on here. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go completely quiet, but I want a transcript immediately after the interview, and we also want the recording. She started behaving herself after that, and she finished the interview properly. Now, let me tell you about the second worst interview that I've ever attended. This was a remote interview. My clients attended in person, I attended remotely. To begin with, the link that I was sent wasn't working, so I contacted them and I said, the link isn't working, what's going on? Now, they took their time in order to get this going, and at the same time they were telling my client, well, your solicitor's link isn't working, so is there really any point? Why don't you just come in and we'll start the interview? He'll just jump in whenever he's ready. My clients thankfully said, no, we're going to wait for our solicitor. So then they contacted me and they said to me, well, the video isn't working. The only other option we have is sound, and it really isn't worth it if you're just going to hear us. So do you really want to attend it? I was like, yeah, I really still want to attend it. My clients are still there. Now, when I initially got into the interview and the interview started, I could tell from the beginning that something wasn't right. The way the questions were phrased was just diabolical. She was asked, how much did you pay for your solicitor? He was asked, how much did you pay for the application? I knew immediately that this is something that is going to be considered an inconsistency, because just a few months before this, we had another client for whom we were doing an appeal. That appeal was effectively hanging on what happened in that interview. And when we asked for the transcript and when we asked for the recording and when we went through it, it turned out that they were both asked a different question. However, the Home Office was still using this as part of the reasons for refusal. So I knew straight away that, okay, fine, something's not right here. You've asked a question in a very different way to two different people, and now you're going to try to say, why isn't the answer the same? Then it got worse. They asked him, did you pay her in order to marry you? He says no. They asked her, did you get paid in order to marry him? She says no. They asked him, you know, when you have a shared bank account and you have shared responsibility and you put money towards a certain thing, how exactly does that work? Do you put money into your account? He says, yes, the money is in my account. The transcript read, did you get paid in order to marry this person? The answer was, yes, the money is in my account. How? If I wasn't there, would anybody believe them that they said what they said? Would anybody believe them that the transcript was wrong? Now, we didn't get a recording for this, and that's because despite the fact that we requested one, the Home Office said that they didn't record that interview. In that particular situation, what are they to do? Who would they go to? Who would believe them that that is not what they said? This is an example of an interviewer who has had a power trip of some sort and disregarded every single code of conduct that she has in order to disadvantage my clients, which is unbelievably unacceptable. But it gets worse. You might have thought that that is the epitome of a bad interviewer. It gets worse. She proceeded to then give my clients immigration advice and at the same time besmirch the reputation of every immigration solicitor there is. The way she did that was, she said to my client, listen, immigration solicitors will lie to you. You need to go back to your home country and make an application from there in order to come into the UK. You cannot make this application from inside the UK. It is not possible. You are going to be losing time, you are going to be losing money, and it's going to affect your immigration history. You should go back to your home country. Don't believe these immigration solicitors. They just want money. And you're the one who's going to have to deal with the consequences, not them. How many times am I going to make this face in this video? How many times? This woman has now given immigration advice, a regulated industry. The only thing she hasn't done is taken money for it. And at the same time, she has besmirched officers of the court. And in her particular circumstances, she had valid leave. She was able to make an application from within the UK. But no, Mrs. Interviewer thought it was best to advise my client in my presence and also at the same time tell her that I could potentially be one of those liars. Now, it is so unfortunate that because we were on audio only and I could only hear the audio, I could not speak. There was nothing I could do to stop this thing happening. There was absolutely nothing I could do to stop this person from doing what she was doing to my clients. But of course, we requested the recording afterwards and we found out that there is no recording, which is ridiculous. And the interview transcript omitted that legal advice that she was giving and the comment that she made about the solicitors. Absolutely ridiculous. This is by far one of the worst interviews I have ever attended. And this is one of the reasons why you should definitely take a solicitor with you to the interview. Because if I wasn't there, who would believe them? Who would believe them that they were given advice in that interview, that they were answering the questions as they were put to them, which was correct, but the transcript is incorrect? Who would believe them? Nobody would. I was there and I saw what was happening and I was taking notes at the same time, and I was able to compare everything and tell them, this is unbelievably ridiculous what's happening to you. But of course, we put in a formal complaint and we'll hopefully find out what happens in relation to that. But let me tell you what we do with our clients when we do attend their interviews. We first go through a mock interview with them. We ask them random questions just to see how they would behave in that environment when they're being questioned. The second thing we do is during the interview, we take notes of everything that is happening. Everything that is asked, everything that is answered, and we make notes of what the red flags potentially will be. When the transcript comes in, we then look at the transcript and compare it to our notes, and we point out exactly where the issues are and then send those to the Home Office. Despite the fact that we have expectations that a caseworker will behave the way they're supposed to as part of their code of conduct and as per the guidances in relation to a fair interview, that doesn't always happen. And this is a good example. This is a great example of what could potentially happen. And the dangerous thing here is that the interview was not recorded. So if I wasn't there, and they did everything they could to keep me out of that interview, but if I wasn't there, what would have happened to them? Because there's absolutely no consideration of the fact that these are human beings that are going to be affected by the decisions that are made. And these are human beings that are affected by these games that are being played here. And their actual lives are being affected. Their money is being spent here. And the consequences are lasting consequences. The allegation of a sham marriage is a lasting consequence. It is something that will prevent this person from ever being able to establish a life in the UK. That is a grave, grave allegation, and it is so easily dropped into this transcript. Unbelievable. So I would always recommend that you learn from this and take a lawyer whenever you go to an interview. There are certain things that will happen beyond this. For example, the interpreters. We've had circumstances, as I said, I go to every single interview, which is why I know that we've had circumstances where the interpreters are acting unbelievably unprofessionally. They're eating whilst they're interpreting. They are saying things to the person that they shouldn't be saying. And the thing is, I can understand multiple languages, so I know exactly what they're saying. The things that happen behind the scenes are unbelievable. And unless you take a solicitor with you to these interviews, sometimes you don't even realize what's happening here shouldn't be happening. I hope you enjoyed these stories, and more so, I hope you learn from these stories. This is myth number 3 in relation to interviews and how people are treated in interviews. We'll be busting 7 more myths in this year. If you want me to bust a particular myth, let me know and I'll be more than happy to consider it. Alternatively, feel free to get in contact with us and we'll be more than happy to consider your case.